All right, so want to thank everyone for joining us today for our monthly ambassador briefing. I am Ben Shlesinger with the American Kidney Fund, and I am the one who works with all you wonderful advocates. And we're lucky to have you all. And we like to do these briefings to give ambassadors a chance to learn a little bit more about what the American Kidney Fund does and our advocacy efforts. And so today we're going to lead off with Leanna Purcell, who is going to talk about the Calendar Kids program that we have at the American Kidney Fund. Go ahead, Leanna.
All right, thank you, Ben. As he said, my name is Leanna Purcell. I'm the Associate Director of Special Events here at the American Kidney Fund. And part of my job is to manage our Calendar Kids art contest. And while I would never pick a favorite part of my job, this one is definitely the cutest part of my job, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So our Calendar Kids art contest is going on its 26th year. So we've been doing this for a long time. And we've had kids from all over the country and territories submit their artwork to be featured in our calendar that's published every year. The people that are eligible are kids that are 18 years and younger that have kidney disease of any form or have a transplant. They can submit any kind of artwork, whether it's a drawing, a poem, a short story, a dance they've choreographed. TikTok is huge nowadays, so we get a couple dances, a short film, whatever art is to them. We've kind of opened up the gamut of what it can be submitted as for our calendar. This year we've had over 36 applications submitted, and then the AKF staff will come together to select our 13 finalists. And those 13 finalists are guaranteed featured in our calendar. So one for every month, plus a cover artist. And that cover artist is chosen in a public vote, a nationwide public vote that's hosted on our website that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But really the goal of this program is to provide kids an opportunity to be recognized and celebrated in a positive way for their kidney disease and kind of have a therapeutic expression of art in a way to show their journey with kidney disease. That doesn't mean their art has to be about kidney disease, but we tend to see a lot of it is with their journey of kidney disease. So last year, our cover artist, who was featured on the 2021 calendar, which is kind of confusing, it says 2020 cover artist because we always vote the year before, so the contest and the calendar years don't always sync up. But her name is Chloe. She's a young lady from Woodbine, New Jersey. I don't know if we have any New Jerseyans in the house today, but she created this 3D print. It's a little hard to tell from these photos, but it's a canvas painting with 3D flowers and kidneys that's called Kidneys and Flowers. And you can read for yourself, but basically she was inspired about her journey to get on the transplant list. And she wished that kidneys grew like flowers and that they were all unique, just like flowers. So she is currently on the transplant waiting list. So she's looking for her kidney right now, but she is just like any other girl. At age 11, she loves making videos with her friends and playing with her horses and her cats, and she has 2 older sisters and a mom and a dad that love her very much. So she's got a lot of support going on in her life. But she is our cover artist for 2021. So you might see her artwork kind of floating around and other things that we do. But what I would like to talk to you guys about today are our 2022 calendar contest finalists and how you can vote to select your favorite one. So if I can get my PowerPoint to move forward, these are our 13 finalists for our calendar arts contest this year. We had, over 36 entries. And we selected these 13 from 10 different states, plus 2 additional honorable mentions, because it's just so hard to choose from so many great artists out there. They all have great, unique individual stories, but what we need your help with is selecting one of these pieces to be featured on the cover of our calendar. And the artist who is featured on our cover not only gets bragging rights, saying they were a published cover art contest winner, they also get recognized at our National Gala, the Hope Fair, in October, and a chance to really be featured as an AKF ambassador for the year, and hopefully for future years to continue on as they grow in their journey with kidney disease. So voting is open until June 30th. So we still have 2 more days to vote. And you can vote for your favorite artist by going to www.kidneyfund.org/contest. I'll put that link in the chat so that you guys can see it later. But you'll see this is what our voting page looks like. And you just go on, you can see the name of the artist and where they're from. So maybe, you're from Baltimore, Maryland, like me, and you want to vote for our Baltimore artist, or just, scroll through the 13 and get to see a little bit more about their artwork and pick your favorite. And a slight plug here for the Hope Affair. Like I said, it's on October 20th, and that is open to the public, free to watch. We would love for you all to attend. I think there's going to be another briefing later in the year to talk a little bit more about the details of it, but you can learn more about that event at thehopeaffair.org. And I'll put that one in the chat too. Shameless little plug for our special events there. You can also purchase these calendars online at our website for $10. And the reason we, put them out for sale is so that we can continue to raise funds for this program, so that we can send art supplies to clinics and patients who, might not have access to art supplies in their home or at their school or, in their hospital. And they also make great holiday gifts. So if you're looking for anything to give that person in your office, or, the random pool that you've drawn someone's name out of the hat, this is a great piece for it, because you get a constant little reminder of the joy that can sometimes get a little lost in this world. This is what our calendar, I'm going to show you this year's calendar. It looks like this. It's called a tent calendar. It just sits on your table. And as you flip through it each month, you get to know a little bit about the artist and their artwork and their piece, and then also a nice big print on the other side. So you constantly have a nice little new piece of artwork on your desk every month. But that is our Calendar Kids Art Contest. If anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, or wants to know more about the contest, I am all ears. I'm going to drop those.
I was just going to say that we can email out the recording for this briefing, and we can email out the link to vote for the Calendar Kids contest as well. But Leanna is going to put the link in the chat window now.
Yep, in it right now. Here you go.
And I will say the voting process for this is totally above board. But when we used to do it in the office, they would give us little circle stickers, and you would put it on the back of each drawing that you liked. And Katie can attest to this, but I would always try and rig it and steal extra sheets of stickers so that the kid's picture that I liked the best would win. But Katie, I can't remember if it's true or not, but I believe I was banned from voting last year.
Yeah, so, luckily it's all done online now, since we're not in the office, so it's a little harder for him to try to steal sticker sheets.
I just wanted to say, Ben, if I can interrupt, my son was featured in it's nice to see you, Leanna, in the 2020 calendar. He was the artist for May, and I will say we bought a whole slew of them, and he was very happy to, give them to his teachers. It was a really nice experience. We're in the DC area, and many of them didn't know about AKF, and it did prompt some discussion. He got to talk to his classmates about his kidney disease, and so it was a very special experience for him. So I would encourage, just share share the link with everybody. People love to vote for stuff like that with kids. It's even his older brother's high school even put the link up on their Facebook page to get everybody to vote. So it's a fun, you feel like sometimes you're bothering people, but when it has to do with kids and when they realize it's chronic disease, I think people really get on board and want to help. So that's my little shameless plug.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, this is Terrence's artwork, actually. He drew it about his mom, so we featured it in May for Mother's Day. I'm glad to see you on here and hear he's doing well, and I'm glad he enjoyed our program, and hopefully that means we'll get to see more of him in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Want to thank Leanna for taking the time today to present to us about the Calendar Kids contest, and once again encourage everyone to vote. But now I'd like to introduce Emily Shetty, who is a state delegate from District 18 in Maryland, which also happens to be the district that I live in. So happy to have her as my elected official. And she's going to speak with us today about sort of best practices with advocacy, especially in her role as an elected official. She meets with groups and individuals all the time, when they're championing their own causes. So just want to open the floor up to Emily so she can impart some wisdom with us.
Thank you, Ben. It's so nice to see you in this forum. Thank you for inviting me to join you all. Hi, advocates. It's nice to be with you this afternoon. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late. I have back-to-back stuff going on today, so I'm so excited to get to take a break, join you with today, and talk about my favorite subject, which is advocacy. So as Ben mentioned, I am a state lawmaker in Maryland. I serve District 18 in Montgomery County, which is, if you're from the area or you're kind of familiar with it, I live across the street from a giant Mormon temple, which is visible from almost like anytime you drive around the big beltway around DC. So if that gives you a sense of sort of where my district is, that's kind of in the middle of the district. I live across the street from it. But the district includes parts of Silver Spring, Garrett Park, Chevy Chase, Wheaton, and Kensington. And I'm serving in my third year of a 4-year term. So it's my first term, running for re-election next year. But these 3 years aren't the only times I've taken or led meetings with advocates. Before I was an elected official, and even still now, because we're a part-time legislature, I do work at the federal level in health policy and in education policy. So I lead advocates to Capitol Hill and do this sort of training for them as well, to talk about, the different perspective of elected officials and staff who are taking meetings on the Hill. And before I started working in the advocacy space at the federal level, I was a Hill staffer. So after graduating from law school, I worked for a Democratic member on energy and commerce, which, as you may know, is the primary committee of jurisdiction on the House side for healthcare issues. And I handled the congressman's healthcare portfolio, in addition to 12 other issues that were totally unrelated to health. So the first thing I will note is if you're meeting with a House staffer in particular, be mindful that there are varying levels of expertise on policy issues, and oftentimes, more often than not, particularly on the House side, congressional offices have smaller staff, and those offices handle numerous issues. So as I mentioned, when I was a House staffer, I had, at the high point of my career on the Hill, I had 13 different unrelated issues, including labor and education and healthcare and women's issues, and a whole host of other stuff, housing. And while we as humans know that many of these issues are interconnected from a policy perspective, oftentimes Staff are in back-to-back meetings, 30 minutes, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And they're sometimes flipping from like one subject matter to another. And so what I found as the most effective meetings when I was a Hill staffer were the meetings that were very organized, that started out with, hi, I am Emily Shetty. I live in your district at this location. I've lived there for X number of years. Start the meeting off with the most important information, which is that you are a constituent and a voter, and that will immediately cue the staff person's sort of thinking cap of like, oh, I better pay extra close attention to this particular advocate because they're about to share something that that is directly impactful in the community that my boss serves. So when you're meeting with a staffer or the representative and you are a constituent, you want to make sure you flag that first so that they're really paying close attention to what you say thereafter. Then you lay out why you're there. So I am a patient with kidney disease, and I'm here today to talk to you about policies that will do X, Y, and Z. And I think oftentimes advocates believe that they have to be the experts on the policies and be able to answer super in the weeds questions about the policy that you're there to speak about. But in truth, staff rarely rely on advocates for that purpose. What they rely on them for is understanding how the policy would actually change your life if impacted. So what is your story that could be really memorable to the staffer of why this bill matters? Like, why are you here, right? Like, clearly you have something that has mobilized you to take time off of work or school to come to Capitol Hill to talk about something that impacts your life so deeply. So really think about how you're going to condense that story and explain, okay, I'm here to talk about, for example, lowering copays, or I'm just giving an example, but I don't, because I'm a little less familiar about the actual bills that you guys are advocating on. But let's say your bill is around lowering copays for dialysis services. Then what you want to do is talk about how the current status quo has harmed your family. In my instance, I have paid X, Y, or Z amount out of pocket, and we hit our deductible by January every year. And this is really unsustainable for our family. We end up taking out a credit card debt in order to pay our healthcare bills for the rest of the year, or whatever your story is. So you want to really explain in really clear language how the status quo has harmed your family. And then you want to talk about, okay, but if this bill, HR, whatever, were enacted, then this is how our family and people in our community would benefit. And I'm not here just on my own. There are XYZ number of patients in our community that would benefit. So you are the advocate who is elevating the voice and the stories of others and sharing their perspective as well. You just happen to have been the one who was able to make the meeting. And so you have to the extent that you're able to, share that you're not alone, that there are many other voters and constituents who are impacted by this as well, and share that statistic to the extent that you have that available. And then, really then I find it helpful to also ask the office, what are you working on? What is your office working on where we might be able to help you? How can we serve as a resource and provide a patient perspective or a story or whatever to help support the work of your boss? That creates a bond between you and the staffer where you're not just asking for something, but you're offering to be helpful too. And I find that often is something that is lacking in a lot of meetings where often as a staff person or even as an elected official now, people are often coming to me and saying like, I need this, I need this, I need this. And it's rare that people say, but I want to have this ongoing relationship from a policy perspective so that I can support the work that you're doing. And I want you to trust that I'll be there for you when needed. But those advocates that have chosen to take that extra step, I have found myself really developing a strong relationship with them and been able to develop legislation around their needs, and have them support other policy issues that also benefit them that they might have been less aware of. So I have found that strategy to be particularly helpful, both from a staff perspective and advocate, or all from a staff perspective, from an advocate perspective, as well as from a legislative perspective. The last thing I'll say that's super, super important, and I think those of you who have done Hill meetings and have done these types of trainings are likely already familiar with this, is the critical importance of following up. So once you conclude your meeting, that should not be the end of the discussion. You should plan to follow up with the staffer, let them know you're a resource, send them digital copies of any one-pagers, a short little reminder of like who you were, what you were there to talk about when you came in, and then let them know that you want to continue to be a resource, to be leaned upon for when they need help and support. And then lastly, a reminder of what your ask is. Now, the one reminder and caveat I'll say is, if your meeting is with somebody who has already been a champion or has co-sponsored whatever your ask is, make sure you say thank you, because I think sometimes that is also something that that is overlooked. The importance of just expressing a little bit of gratitude for the office's recognition of the support needed for your issues. So a thank you goes a long way. Being kind and respectful is super helpful. I know that kind of sounds a little bit cliche, but it is something that often is overlooked as well. I can't tell you how many meetings I've taken, both as an elected official and as a staffer, where the person came in cursing and screaming. Those never end well. So you never want to be that person who is coming in kicking and screaming, but instead, even if your office is one that has never been one to support your issues, you can still find common ground, hopefully, or try to bring them to your side if you come at them with kindness and respect versus, the screaming approach. And then, the importance of following up cannot be overstated. Make sure you follow up with the office so they have your contact info, they have the materials handy, and know how to reach you when they ultimately come back and say, yes, they will support your issue. Are there, Ben, would you like me to take some questions from people, or what would be most helpful now?
Sure. Well, I just had a few quick questions for you.
Sure.
So, in your experience, are there any sort of advocacy techniques that people tend to use that you think are not as effective as others?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it is not uncommon for people to kind of come to a meeting with an adversarial tone, right? Like, you never supported this, or why didn't you do that? That never ends well. So I have found that, as a staff person or even from my elected capacity, it's really hard to try and find common ground with somebody if really you're spending most of the meeting trying to calm them down and de-escalate a meeting. So coming at it from like hey, I really want to thank you for your time. I know how busy things are. This is what I plan to share with you. That is super helpful. And then the other thing that often I think happens that is really not the most effective strategy is if you just come in and you just launch into the meeting, versus, even just a little bit of, small talk. Hey, how are you doing? How are things going? This is a really challenging time. Really grateful for your taking the time out. Are you guys back in the office? What's that transition been like? I mean, your time with them is often very limited, but still, like, that personal connection is really important. And so being able to do that at the start of the meeting, but then launching into this is what I want to cover in a very like, I'm going to outline to you at the start of the meeting to explain this is what I'm going to say to you. That helps too, because if you just go even from small talk right into a bill, it's very confusing. So you really want to like say, like, we're here to talk about this. This is a bill we're going to focus on, and then go from there. That's a really effective approach.
And can you also talk about the importance of working with legislative staff who may not be experts on your specific topic?
Yeah. So, I think people often expect that when they make a meeting request with their congressional office, that it's always going to be with a member of Congress, right? And that's not often the case. Members have incredibly demanding jobs, crazy schedules, and are pulled in like 1,000 directions at the same time. So it's really quite rare, actually. I would say it depends, but it's a little bit more rare to get the member level meeting. And the House side in particular, staff cover a number of different issues, and there is a lot of turnover on Capitol Hill. Their staff tend to be a bit younger. The jobs don't pay very much, and they're very demanding hours. So, when I worked on Capitol Hill, it was not uncommon for me to get off of work well after 10 p.m., occasionally 4 a.m. the next day. It was a really demanding job. So, that's a type of job that a lot of people in their 20s, maybe early 30s are able to accommodate. But once people have, family demands, it's really difficult to structure a life around a job like that. Staff are often, new to issues, but the learning curve is very steep on the Hill. And so, somebody who might, have been reassigned the healthcare portfolio, today, they could become like an expert in it within a week and a half because of the number of back-to-back meetings and briefings and hearings that they go to, depending on how much self-motivation the staff person has. That said, when they're handling that portfolio, they are the only person in the office handling it. So the member, their boss, relies on them for advice on whether to co-sponsor or do something on a bill. So even if the staff person is brand new to the Hill, brand new to the issue, they are the office's expert that the boss is looking to. So it's our job as advocates to help provide them with information about the issue, about the bill, so that they can then turn around and share that with the boss with a recommendation that they should co-sponsor our bills.
Sure. Can you also talk about how, aside from the major national issues, how there is a lot of bipartisanship, both in state houses and on Capitol Hill, and if a member might not be from your preferred party, they're still very important to consult and work with?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that, like, even if your member is not from, your preferred party, they still care about what your views are as a constituent of their district. And so you shouldn't really write them off just because, they have a different party affiliation from your own. Most bills in Congress are bipartisan. Most bills that pass are bipartisan. And it's in large part because even though the House, the Senate, and the administration are of the same party, the filibuster rules in the Senate really require like a 60 vote majority in order to pass most legislation. And so knowing that a lot of bills that do move forward tend to be bipartisan. And so, yeah, working with people across the aisle is really important to passing legislation.
Oh, thank you. I want to open it up to people here on this briefing. If you want, you can type in a question in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask Emily yourself.
Well,
don't have
I
to-
am never out of things to say, so I have a question.
Sure.
I am a living kidney donor. I donated about 7 months ago to a stranger. We are now friends. I love him. He's wonderful. And before I donated, I was encouraged to get life insurance because the rates are really high if you have one kidney, because having one kidney is a pre-existing condition. And I was like, that's stupid. I'm 31. I'm going to change the law. So I got a meeting with my she's in the House of Delegates. I'm in Virginia, but she's local. She's the state representative, not
Sure.
the US House. And I had a meeting with her, and she was not hostile, but she really wanted to know, like, what is the, like, what's the backlash? Who's going to come after us? What are we looking at? And I honestly don't even know. And I've been trying to find, like, who's going to be mad that living kidney donors, don't want to have an extra $30 on their insurance every month. But I haven't found anything. I mean, how do I
I'm
even
familiar with the bill that you're referencing because Maryland passed a version of this, I think my first year in office, and the Living Donor Protection Act, which would prohibit insurers from essentially discriminating in their pricing against those who make this extraordinary sacrifice. So I know at the federal level that there was an attempt to pass, because there have been a number of states that have passed bills like this. And I know at the federal level, there was an effort as well to just bring national uniformity. I thought that bill passed last year, but I might be mistaken. Does anyone from AKF know whether the Federal Living Donor Protection Act passed?
No, that has not passed yet.
Oh, okay. My
But
apologies.
it has passed on a number of state houses, and I think, is Lindsay, are you on the call?
I am on the call.
Oh, so I don't know if you can just chime in a little bit about what we've done on the state level with LDPA.
Sure. And thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate your inquiry about the Virginia bill, and I would certainly love to chat with you offline about it, because we have wanted to introduce the LDPA in Virginia for a number of years now. But I know Alyssa from our team had just put in the chat box we have a Living Donor Protection Act report card that pretty much gives a breakdown of state by state and grades each state from an A to an F on the protections that the state has for living donors. So you can check it out, and everyone on the call can see it. I know I've chatted about this on some of these ambassador briefings before, and encouraging you to check out and see what letter grade your state has. And we've passed a number of the Living Donor Protection Acts at the state level this year. And certainly, if the state has not passed these protections, we are certainly working on introducing it for the next legislative session. Unfortunately, just like Maryland and a lot of other states, it's not a year-round session. So once the session begins again next January in 2022, is when we're hopeful that we'll have this bill introduced. And during the summer and fall and winter months is when we're preparing to introduce that bill. And having that conversation with your state lawmaker is a great first step. I think if we can certainly get your information and hers, we can have that conversation to her, about, any questions that she may have on the bill, and what opposition the bill may or may not have. We typically do not have any opposition on these bills at the state level, so we're happy to have that conversation with her, and then even hopefully have an ask to her to maybe even introduce the bill, since we were unable to do it last year. But please feel free to take a look at that report card, and then I can connect with you offline too to get your information, so we can chat about this.
let's definitely do that, because I'm gonna get this passed if I have to knock on everyone's door in the state of Virginia to do it. But I'm gonna get it.
And great, that's fantastic. So thank you so much for joining this call, and would love to chat with you about it so we can get this done in Virginia.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Is any other questions?
I don't have a question, Ben. It's Tamara. I just want to thank Emily for sharing that information. We can definitely use that. That's very helpful information, and I've been taking notes. So thank you very much for being here and sharing with us.
My pleasure.
And there's a question in the chat.
Oh, from Allison. It says,
Yeah, I mean, I have found you want to talk about. Okay, so that is a really good question. I think so what I like to recommend to advocates, so the question is, how much should you share or not share when as an advocate you are telling your story? So that's a really, really great question. What I like to recommend is start out by asking the staff person or elected official how much they're familiar with kidney disease. So that way you kind of know what the baseline is, right? And then you can kind of also gauge their comfort level a little bit. Like if they're like, yeah, I kind of know enough about it, but go ahead and tell me your story. Then you share a slightly more condensed version. If they're like, I really don't know much about it, but I'd love for you to educate me. Then you can also know like, okay, this is the slightly longer version I can share. Some staff also, they just kind of get curious. And so they'll be like, well, how did you know that you had kidney disease? How did it present? Like they just kind of want to know like all the details. Others are more interested in sort of like the policy impact that your disease has had on your life. So meaning, if you're there to talk about copays, for example, then what has been like the average copay you've spent? Or if you're there to talk about the Living Donor Protection Act, then you talk about what it has meant to you to not be able to find a kidney donor, or how you have identified a number of people, but they're all really nervous about having to take out significantly higher health or life insurance, or being denied life insurance after. So I think you can really get a good handle on how much detail to go into by starting out by asking that question, like, how familiar are you with kidney disease? And then,
I'll interrupt real quick, and I'll say, we always say that during our meetings, because a lot of these staffers that we meet with, either they have kidney disease or someone in the office has, or a family member has. And we did a meeting with, the senator's name escapes me, but with the local staff, and the senator staff member said that one person in the Capitol Hill office got a kidney transplant in 2020, and then another person donated a kidney to somebody else last year as well. And so they didn't really publicize it, but since we asked, he told us about it and said that how the staff is intimately aware of the issues regarding kidney disease.
And that's really good information for advocates to share back with the internal AKF team, because I'm sure that they have some sort of like spreadsheet where they're tracking this type of information, so that then they know like, okay, these people are our target allies, because they already have a base understanding and a sympathy for what patients are going through.
Yeah, and just to touch upon that, Emily, I am really big into spreadsheets and organization, things like that. So we do have sort of an internal database that we keep of these connections. And after each meeting, we log the meetings and put in the special notes. But if I'm doing a call with the local staff, then I will email my AKF colleagues that do the DC lobbying, so that they know that this senator's staff had the kidney issues, or this House member's staff had kidney issues, so that way they know. And then they can follow up with the offices about signing legislation. And so I will point out another key tip is that if you're doing stuff with a local staff, you really should not bog them down with legislation, because that's not what they do. And we did a call with Senator McConnell's staff about a month or so ago, and they said any legislation whatsoever has to be done with the DC office, and they don't do meetings in the local office about legislation, because it said that's not what it's for. It's for constituents. And we ended up having a wonderful meeting and never mentioned legislation once. So
yeah, I mean, I think those offices are more interested in things like if you're aware of resources for them to connect patients to, or things that you found helpful in that regard. So again, building that relationship with the office so that they can see you as a trusted resource, or events that the member can join. That's the type of stuff that you'd want to like flag for a local office.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, I'd like to thank Emily for taking time out of her schedule today to participate in this briefing with us, and thank Leanna as well for sharing about the Calendar Kids contest. And like I said earlier, we will have an off the record question and answer time now for those who didn't want any questions to be said online. So thank you everyone for joining.